Hallo zusammen. Hello everyone. Welcome to a new video for the A1 level from Alemán sin licencia, German without license. In this video, we will talk about the past. So how to express the past in German. The good news is that in German we have one tense, the present perfect in German. So in German it's called perfect. With this tense, we nearly can express everything in the past. It's like German natives have the tendency to all the time use the perfect. There exists as well as simple past in German, but it's rare time use. It's just used for two specific verbs. We will see it in more detail later on. But you are quite good prepared. If you are able to apply the perfect, you can express nearly everything in the past. So in the daily life, especially in oral conversation, the so-called Präteritum, what would be the German simple past, will not occur a lot, besides some exception verbs. Okay, so we will start directly. So I'm talking, for example, about a sentence like Ich arbeite heute, I'm working today. And if the question would be, for example, und gestern, and yesterday, gestern, yesterday, and I have to use the past tense because obviously it was yesterday. Ich habe gestern gearbeitet. Okay, this would be an example of perfect, a perfect sentence, a present perfect sentence in English. So I have worked, or yesterday I have worked yesterday. Okay, but step by step. This just as a first example, we will have a look step by step. First of all, we will have a look at this term here. It's a rare form of the verb arbeiten. That's the so-called Partizip 2. Okay? In English, the regular form would be of the verb to work. For example, you add the ed at the end. Worked. Okay? This ed ending would be the participe in English. Okay? So in German, we have as well a participe. It's called Partizip 2. And we will have a look how we build the Partizip 2. So the regular verbs, like for example spielen, what we're doing is we cut the ending en, keep the stem. In this case, we keep spiel, and then we have to add ge in front of it and a t at the end of the stem. And the result would be in this case gespielt. Okay. So that's the typical Partizip 2 in German for the group of regular verbs, like spielen, tanzen, malen, kochen. Just a few examples, okay? All regular verbs, okay? The second group of regular verbs would be the group we have seen briefly at the beginning of the video, the verbs with the ending ten or den. Okay, for example, arbeiten or reden. They're working out nearly the same way. The only difference would be we do not cut en, we just cut n of the infinitive. So we keep the additional e. This is just because of pronunciation reason. If we would not have here the additional e in between, it would be like gearbeitet. So two t's or dt, difficult to pronounce. So we add the additional e in between, or we keep it from the infinitive, we just cut n of the infinitive. The rest stays the same. We add ge in front of it and add t at the end. This way we create the Partizip 2 of all verbs that are ending with ten or den. Okay, so that's the second group of regular verbs regarding the Partizip 2. The third group would be the one with the ending ieren. Okay, an example would be studieren. Okay, studieren, in this case, again, we cut en, so the ending, but we do not add ge in front. We just add a t at the end. Okay, so this applies for all the verbs that are ending with ieren. Another example would be, for example, buchstabieren, to spell out. Okay, So we do not add ge in front in case of these verbs, we just add a t at the end. So therefore the Partizip 2 of studieren will be studiert. Okay, so we have three groups of regular verbs regarding the Partizip. Okay, but as in English, I mean, in English the rule for regular one would be adding ed at the end of the infinitive. Okay, as I said, like for example, played. Okay, we add to the verb play ed at the end. But as in English, we have a lot of irregular verbs in German as well, like taught, bought, and so on. In German, here you have a few. Okay, obviously there exist a lot. I will tell you like in 2 slides, around about 20. In my opinion, that's enough for the A1 level. Okay, so with the time you will hear and learn more and more irregular forms, so there exists a lot more. Okay, but these are the most common ones. The good news is, as in English, the most common verbs, okay, like to bring, for example, are the irregular ones, or to be as well. In German as well, sein, for example. In English as well, to write, written is irregular. In German as well, schreiben. Okay, so the most common verbs that are occurring the most in daily language use are the irregular ones regarding the Partizip 2. So therefore, you are forced, let's say, to know these irregular forms because you have to use them. This will be the verbs you use the most. Okay? So we can have a look at the irregular forms, but in general, I cannot explain you a lot. There are different types of irregular ones, and there's no logic in which pattern we put it. For example, you have some verbs like fahren, where you keep the infinitive and just add ge in front. So the Partizip 2 is gefahren. Then you have some like bleiben, where you have a vowel change in the Partizip 2, and you have geblieben as Partizip 2. Binden works out the same, has also a vowel change, in this case from I to you. So no reason why. It's just unfortunately like this, gefunden. Okay? Gegeben is the one of geben. Lesen changes to gelesen. Sein, theoretically it's gewesen. Later on I will tell you why you will not use it. Okay? Normally you will not use it, but it exists. Kommen changes to gekommen. Schreiben changes to geschrieben. Treffen to getroffen. Okay? So there are no rules how to create irregular Partizip 2 forms. They're just irregular. That's why you have to memorize them and to study them. Gehen, go, changes to gegangen. Denken, denken, to think, is changing to gedacht. Wissen, to know, is changing to gewusst. Sehen, to see, to gesehen. Trinken, to drink, to getrunken. Ankommen, to arrive, to angekommen. We will talk later on about the verbs like ankommen, the separable verbs. But ankommen is, as common as well, a irregular one. Nehmen, genommen. Schlafen, geschlafen. Nehmen, to take pills, for example, or to take an item. Schlafen, to sleep. Geschlafen, essen, to eat. Gegessen, sprechen, to speak. Gesprochen, anrufen, to call. Angerufen. Okay, these just as some examples. Okay, but in my opinion, that's enough. So if you know these and those, I would say that's fine for the A1 level. Okay, but as I cannot help you more regarding this is just a question of memorization, we will head on. So these would be the irregular forms for the Partizip 2. Now let's have a look how we build really the Partizip 2 in a whole sentence. As in English, it's not how to build the Partizip 2, how to build the perfect. Okay, obviously part of the perfect would be the Partizip 2. As in English, but that's not all, as in English. Okay, so here we have the verb, for example, I have chosen machen, to do. Okay, in English the participle would be done. In German the participle is regular, So of machen, we cut en and add ge in front and t at the end. Therefore, we have the partizip gemacht. Okay? By the way, if somebody is asking him or herself why it's called Partizip 2, there exists a Partizip 1. The Partizip 1 is rare time used in German. That's why it's just taught at the B1 level. Okay, at the B1 level, you will learn the Partizip 1. It's not that important. Partizip 2, way more important, but that's why you have the number 2 afterwards. Okay. So we have as in English an auxiliary verb. In English you have the verb to have as an auxiliary verb. So this sentence would be, ich habe gestern Hausaufgaben gemacht. I have done. Ich habe gemacht. I have done. Okay, you use the verb haben as auxiliary verb. Sorry, the verb to have in German, you use the verb haben as well as an auxiliary verb. So what we are doing is we conjugate the verb haben regarding the subject of the sentence. So here you have it. So for ich habe gemacht, that would be I have done. But for do, I have to change the conjugation for haben, of course. Present conjugation, by the way. Simple present conjugation of the verb haben. Du hast gemacht, you have done. Er, sie, es hat gemacht. Here you have as well a change in English. He, she, it has done. So this we have to adapt as well in German. Er, sie, es hat gemacht. Wir haben gemacht. We have done, ihr habt gemacht, you have done, sie haben gemacht, they have done, or if it's the formal one, you have done. Okay? Would be this form. So a big difference you can notice in the example sentence above. In English, you keep the auxiliary verb together with the participle. So you say, I have done my homeworks, for example. Okay? So you don't put something between have and done, okay? In German, it's an obligation. In German, you separate the auxiliary verb from the Partizip 2, okay? So the rule is the auxiliary verb, in this case, the auxiliary verb haben, is the one you conjugate. There you can see you have the changes, okay? The main verb, the principal verb, is staying in the Partizip 2, there you have no changes. Okay, so the auxiliary verb haben is the conjugated one. The verb haben stays at the second position in main clauses. Okay, so it's at the normal position where the verb belongs to in a phrase. Okay, but the position of the Partizip 2 is not after the auxiliary verb, it's at the end, at the whole sentence. Okay, so if you would have just a basic phrase like I have done, ich habe gemacht. Okay, that's not a complete sentence in German, so there's missing an object. But that doesn't matter, to not make it more difficult than it has to be. The important information is that in German you have to place the Partizip 2 all the time at the end of the sentence. Means if you have additional information in between, you have to put them in between and not after the Partizip 2. You put them after the conjugated verb, before the Partizip 2. So in this example, for example, we would have ich habe gestern Hausaufgaben gemacht. Yesterday I have done homework. In this case, it would be an error to say ich habe gemacht gestern Hausaufgaben. No, you cannot place the gemacht here. It's an obligation to place gemacht at the end of the sentence. That's a fixed sentence order rule in German. Partizip 2, last position of the sentence in main clauses. Okay? So that's why I tell you have to separate them. Okay? In very short sentences, obviously, where you have nothing else than the subject and the verb, it stays together, but in 99% of the case, you have to separate it. Okay? You have to put the Partizip 2 at the end of the sentence. Or to make it easier, at the end, once you have built the sentence, you have to check, is the Partizip 2 the last word of the sentence? Okay? Here regarding the beginning of the sentence, as I told you, the only rule you have to follow is conjugated verb, second position. So it doesn't matter if you put subject at the first position or if you put first something else like the temporal information at the first position and the subject after the verb in that case. Okay. Important is that the Partizip 2 stays at the end. Okay. So the Partizip 2 you cannot put at the first position. Okay. Partizip 2, fixed position at the end of the sentence, okay? But the first position stays a joker position, okay? You just cannot put a verb there. Okay, so this would be the two options for a whole sentence, okay? Now we have a big difference between German and English regarding the construction of the present perfect, regarding the construction of the perfect in German. So what English does not have is a second auxiliary verb. For example, French has it as well. So it's working out more or less the same way as in French. In German, we have a second auxiliary verb, the verb sein. Okay, so you have the choice between two auxiliary verbs, between haben and between sein. In English, you will have all the time the auxiliary verb to have. That's the big difference between German and English. That's the biggest one. Besides that, logically, it's very similar, let's say, the perfect and the present perfect in English. So which verbs have the, obviously it's not like random that you can pick whatever auxiliary verb you like. No, you have to follow specific rules. So the big majority of the verbs are built with the auxiliary verb haben. Okay, this is the big majority. Some verbs are built with the auxiliary verb sein. This would be all the verbs that are indicating a change of place. There are some exceptions, but most of the time, these are the verbs that are indicating a change of place. Okay, I have mentioned here a few. Again, there exists a lot more. You will learn more with the time, but in my opinion, for the A1 level, that would be enough, again, to know those. Okay, so for example, gehen. Gehen is indicating a change of place. Okay, that's why it's not built with the auxiliary verb haben, it's built with the auxiliary verb sein. I have chosen in this case all the time the example, the conjugation for er. Okay, er ist gegangen, he's gone. So you see it, but it's working out logically the same way as haben. We will see it on the next slide. You just conjugate the verb sein as auxiliary verb in present, and you add the Partizip 2 at the end of the sentence. Okay, so fahren means to drive or to go by, for example, to go by taxi or something like this. Er ist gefahren, so you can see fahren indicates also a change of place. That's why it's built with sein. Kommen, to come, if somebody is coming, that's also a change of place. It's built with sein. Ankommen, to arrive, for sure, if you're arriving at the airport, for example, change of place. Passieren, this, yeah, you can interpret it as exception because it has two meanings in German. It could be to pass if a train is passing, okay? This you can interpret as a movement. But passieren means as well to happen in English, and obviously that's no movement, okay? Still, also in the case if it's meant to be happen, it is built with sein, okay? You have never the case of a verb that a verb can be built with haben and sein. It has all the time a fixed auxiliary verb, okay? It's not changing its auxiliary verb. Bleiben, that's the big exception, okay? Bleiben means to stay, or yeah, to stay, there's no movement. If I'm staying at the chair, I don't move. But still it's built with sein, so that's the big exception of the list. Fliegen, to fly, that's again a movement. And sein, well, that would be as well an exception. You will not use this form. Theoretically, it exists, so the verb sein itself in perfect is built with the auxiliary verb sein. Okay, er ist gewesen. He has been. Okay, but later on I will tell you, you will not use a lot this form. That's a form very advanced level. Okay, native speakers use it sometimes, but for you, you can ignore it. Okay, so let's have a look how it is working out in a real sentence with the verbs with sein. First of all, we will come to the reason why I said you will not use this form ich bin gewesen. Okay, so the verbs sein and haben, if you really want to express them in the past, like for example, let's say if you want to say Yeah, in English you would have the tendency to use as well the simple past in these kind of cases. But let's say I have been a student, okay? If you were to say this, so you would to bin would be the partizip of sein, okay? In German it would be ich bin gewesen, okay? Instead of these forms, and if you use hatten, like if you would say in English, I have had a cold, okay? Also in English, you would have the tendency to use simple past, doesn't matter. So instead of ich habe gehabt, so if you really want to use the Partizip 2 of sein and haben, so if you want to use sein and haben not as an auxiliary verb, if you want to use it as main verb, then you would have to use the Präteritum in German. The Präteritum would be the simple past, okay? So instead of ich bin gewesen, you will say ich war, I was. In English, you have a lot of times the same tendency. Instead of ich habe gehabt, you will say ich hatte, I had, okay? Regarding the Präteritum, you will learn it at the B1 level. As I told you at the beginning of the video, German native have the tendency to use all the time orally perfect. Okay, that's why the Präteritum is not that important. You will face it a lot of times in written sources, like journals or something like this, but it's not that important and it's quite difficult. That's why you will learn it at the B1 level. With the perfect, you can defend yourself quite good in the daily life. Okay, you just have to use the verb sein and haben in Präteritum, and at the A2 level, you will learn the modal verbs are also used in Präteritum. Okay, all the other verbs like spielen, kochen, and so on, you will learn the Präteritum at the B1 level. So, how is working out the Präteritum for haben and sein? Here again, my example, instead of ich bin 2010 Student gewesen, in 2010 I have been a student, you would say immediately in 2010 I was a student. Ich war 2010 Student. Okay, this sentence you will not build. You will use the verb sein in Präteritum. Or another example, as well, it's very artificial, okay, because in English you would use as well the simple past. Ich habe gestern einen Termin gehabt. I have had yesterday a meeting. You would say immediately in simple past. In German as well, you would say yesterday I had a meeting. Ich hatte gestern einen Termin, okay? So here, haben is the main information of the sentence, not the auxiliary verb, it's the main verb. Okay, in this case you use Präteritum. Here you have already seen how it's working out, so I just show you the conjugation of haben in Präteritum, okay? Again, these are just forms you have to study. Yeah, so I will not explain a lot, it's just forms you have to memorize. Just the pronunciation I will show you. Ich hatte, du hattest, sie es hatte, wir hatten, ihr hattet, sie hatten. In English, it would be all the time had. Okay, you obviously, as in present, you do not have a declination of the verbs in English most of the times. So it would be I had, you had, he, she, it had, we had, you had, they had, and the formal you had. Okay, in German, you have a conjugation. Also in Präteritum, you have to adapt the endings. Okay, same as in present tense. Okay, that's why you have to memorize all these forms for haben. These would be the forms for haben in Präteritum. Okay. How would we use the Präteritum in a whole sentence? A lot more easier than the perfect. If we compare these two sentences, the first one is in present tense. That would be ich habe heute einen Termin. Today I have a meeting. And if you want to put this now in simple past, you have to change nothing. You just change the conjugation of haben. Instead of present tense, you conjugate it in simple past. It means like I choose here the correct form of haben in simple past. For ich, it would be hatte, and that's it. Ich hatte gestern einen Termin. The rest stays the same. Obviously, just the temporal information I have interchanged because you cannot build the same sentence with today, so you have interchanged today with yesterday, gestern, okay? But the order of the sentence is the same, okay? And the positioning of the conjugated verb in Präteritum stays second position in a main clause, okay? So the preteritum has no influence on the sentence order. It stays that the conjugated form second position, and that's it. That's why the preteritum is normally the order way easier than the perfect order. Okay. Another example: Heute hast du einen Termin. Today you have a meeting. Okay. So just to show you that you don't have to start a sentence with the subject, you can start as well, for example, with the temporal information. In this case, the subject of the sentence would be du. Okay, here we have the present conjugation hast. We put it now in the past, so and say, yesterday you had a meeting. Gestern hattest du einen Termin. What are we doing? We keep the same sentence, besides that I interchange heute, today with yesterday. And the conjugation of haben instead of the present one, I go to the table, search for the one of du, would be hattest, put it here instead of the present conjugation, and the rest of the sentence I copy. Okay, so you see this preteritum has no influence on the sentence order. The conjugated form second position doesn't matter if the conjugated form is in present conjugated or in preteritum conjugated. Okay, and the same way it's working out with sein. Okay, so sein, to be, there the conjugated forms would be ich war, I was, du warst, you were, sie es war, he she it was, wir waren, we were, ihr wart, you were, sie waren, they were, or the former one, sie waren, you were. Okay? Again, here regarding the conjugation, it's a very irregular one. I cannot explain you a lot, so it's just a memorization task for you. Okay? In the whole sentence, it's working out the same way like haben in preteritum. We would have the present sentence, ich bin dieses Jahr Student. This year I'm student. Okay? And imagine instead of the temporal information this year, I interchange it now with 2010, so a year in the past. Then the sentence would be so, if you say in 2010 I was a student, ich war 2010 Student. Okay? In this case, again, preteritum has no influence on the order in a sentence, so where to put the conjugated verb doesn't matter if it's in present or in preteritum. In this case, it stays at the second position. Okay? You do not touch the order. The preteritum has no influence on the sentence order. The rest of the structure stays the same. Also, you can start with the temporal information. So in the present, you would say, dieses Jahr bist du Student, for example. This year, you are a student. And if you're going now to the past, and instead of this year, you're saying in 2010, then the sentence would be 2010 warst du Student. In 2010, you were a student. Okay? So the only thing you're doing, you're interchanging the conjugated form in present with the corresponding one of du. Here in the table, you can see it, warst in preteritum. And that's it. Okay? So basically the use of haben and sein in the past, you use all the time preteritum. Okay? You will not put haben or sein in perfect, you use haben or sein in preteritum. Okay? That would be the information regarding haben or sein. So, after this small drive to the preteritum, let's say, so we will come back to the perfect. So, as I said, I wanted to show you just the comparison, how it's built with the auxiliary verb haben and how it's built with the auxiliary verb sein. Here you go. There you have a table where you can see it. It's basically working out the same way, okay? Just instead of haben conjugated, you conjugate the verb sein. So it would be ich bin gekommen, I have come. In English, of course, the translation is all the time with the auxiliary verb to have, as you just have one auxiliary verb in English. Du bist gekommen, you have come, sie es ist gekommen, he she it has come, wir sind gekommen, we have come, ihr seid gekommen, you have come, sie sind gekommen, they have come, or the former one, sie sind gekommen, you have come. Okay? So you simply conjugate the verb sein in present and put as well partizip 2 at the end of everything. So in whole sentences, we would have an example like here. Okay, so I have introduced as well the separable verbs in this slide. I will tell you later on an aspect regarding the separable ones. Just let me finish first regarding the difference between the verb, the auxiliary verb sein and the auxiliary verb haben. So einkaufen means to buy. Okay, no movement. That's why it's built with the verb haben. Ankommen to arrive. Yeah, there is a movement. That's why it's built with the verb sein. Okay, so what's happening? Regarding, I have added now some complements. In this case, I have built a sentence, for example, ich habe Fleisch eingekauft. I have bought meat. In this case, I have built the sentence, ich bin am Flughafen angekommen. I have arrived at the airport. Okay? So, what are you doing? Second position stays the conjugated verb. If the main verb is a verb that indicates a movement, the auxiliary verb is sein. It's conjugated in all its form corresponding to the subject. Then you add all the complements, and then at the end of the sentence, the participle. Okay, ankommen has an irregular one, that's angekommen. Einkaufen has a, it is a regular one. We will see it later on how to build the participles of the separable verbs, but it's at the last position of the sentence. Okay? Eingekauft. So how you build the participles of the separable one, you can ignore for the moment. The information is just important that you have at the second position haben conjugated or sein conjugated, then all the complements, in this case Fleisch, in that case am Flughafen, and at the end of the sentence you have the participle frei. Okay? And again, doesn't matter where you have the subject. Okay, you can start a sentence with the subject, like ich habe gestern Fleisch eingekauft, or you can start as well with the temporal information and put the subject after the auxiliary verb. Okay, the auxiliary verb stays second position, and the participle stays at the very last position. Okay, it doesn't matter if you put subject at the first position or the subject at the third position. Same applies for the ones that are built with the auxiliary verb sein. You can have the subject first, or you can have it after the auxiliary verb. But the auxiliary verb stays second position all the time, and the participle stays all the time last position in main clauses. Okay? So this would be the difference between the verbs that are built with the auxiliary verb haben and the ones that are built with the auxiliary verb sein. Now let's have a look at the participles of the so-called trennbare Verben, that would be the separable verbs. We have here an example, einkaufen. Remember, ein is a prefix you have to separate if you conjugate the verb. So you cannot say ich einkaufe in present. You have to say ich kaufe ein. So ein at the end of the sentence. How it's working out in the perfect. In the perfect, what you're doing is you keep the prefix ein, then you are adding ge, and then you're adding the participle frei of the verb. Okay, so in case of kaufen, it's kauft, so a t. Okay, because the ge you have already added in front. You do not add it both times, two times. You will not say ein gekauft. Okay. Same game with ankommen. First the prefix an, then ge, and then the participle. The participle of kommen stays kommen. Okay, that's irregular, as I already mentioned before. Okay, so here you have it a little bit as a reminder. We had it in the video regarding the verbs with separable prefixes. So these are some examples for separable prefixes. Anrufen we had with ankommen, so an is a separable one. So in present, ich rufe meinen Onkel an. In the past tense, it would be ich habe meinen Onkel angerufen. Okay, so you can see what is happening all the time with the separable prefixes is that you have the prefix in front of the ge. Okay, you first have the prefix, then you have ge. The participle form can be irregular, like rufen. Rufen stays rufen. Okay, there you have no t at the end. Or it can be regular, like in case of kaufen, where you have the t at the end. Okay, this depends on the verb. But what you will all the time have with the verbs with separable prefix is first the prefix and then GE, okay? And you will all the time have GE, okay? That's a big difference. In the video regarding the separable prefixes, I mentioned that there are as well verbs that have non-separable prefixes, like be, end, zer, oder miss, for example. I told you regarding the session for the separable prefixes, it doesn't matter because in present, yeah, it's like whatever kind of other verbs which have no prefixes, like machen or something like this. Okay, you just conjugate it together, okay, with the prefix in present. So for example, bezahlen, here we have the BE prefix. Ich bezahle die Tasche. I pay for the bag. Okay. In this case, you just keep it together in the conjugation. So I told you already in the video regarding the separable prefix verbs that in the past tense it has a role, okay? Because in the past tense you can memorize now the rule that these verbs with a non-separable prefix, means like with the prefix be, end, zer, und miss, for example, have no GE in der Partizip 2, okay? Ich habe die Tasche bezahlt, okay? So, if you have the prefix be of a verb, you know, okay, the participle is built without GE, okay? There is no bezahlt or gebezahlt or something like this. No. For those verbs, you know it's without GE, okay? In this case, you just add DT at the end. So you cut en and add DT at the end for the regular ones, okay? Therefore, you have bezahlt. Ich habe die Tasche bezahlt. I have paid for the bag. Entfernen would be remove, okay? Er entfernt den Fleck. He removes the stain. Der Fleck, the stain. As I said, present conjugation, there you can see it doesn't matter. That's why I mentioned the non-separable prefix verbs just play a role in the perfect. In the present, it doesn't matter. You just conjugate the verb and that's it. But in the perfect, you can see er hat den Fleck entfernt. He has removed the stain. And again, here you can see you just have the prefix. You have no GE. Not in front. It's not G entfernt or entfernt. No, you have no GE. You just have the T after the stem. Okay, so you cut en and add the T. Therefore, you have as Partizip 2 entfernt. Okay, so this would be the difference you have to keep in mind regarding the building of the Partizip 2 for verbs with prefix. The prefixes that are non-separable have no GE. You just have the normal prefix of the verb and then you cut en and add a T, and add a T at the end. Therefore, in case of bezahlen, you cut en and add a T. In case of entfernen, you cut en and add a T. There are also irregular as well, but for the regular verbs, it would work out that way. Regarding the ones with a separable prefix, you know that you all the time have to put first the prefix, then GE, and then a participle. You have a lot of irregular ones regarding the verbs with separable prefix. Anrufen is irregular, so there you just have rufen. You add no T at the end. Einkaufen is regular. In case of einkaufen, you first add the prefix ein, then GE, and then the T at the end. Okay? So it means like, but what is all the time the case for those with the separable prefix? You have the GE in the Partizip 2 after the prefix. Okay, so first prefix, then GE. Afterwards, the participle can be irregular, but the beginning is all the time the same. Prefix, GE, and then the Partizip 2. Okay, it's just yeah, as a reminder regarding the verbs with separable prefix. And of course, you write it in one word. Okay, there's no space between prefix and the participle. You write it in one word. Okay, so this would be the special aspect regarding prefixes in the perfect. So therefore, we can have a look at full sentences for those, but it's quite the same. So I hope that everything is clear by now. So to make the difference between separable and non-separable ones, you can see it here. In case of the ones that are separable, you have all the time GE in the participle. In case of those that are non-separable, you cannot find a GE in the participle 2. Okay, there's no GE, just the prefix, and for the regular one, a T at the end. Okay. Regarding the sentence structure, stays the same. Conjugated auxiliary verb second position, participle 2 at the end. No changes there. Okay. So I hope this has been clear. So the sentence, ich habe gestern Fleisch eingekauft, would be, I have bought meat yesterday. Or you change a little bit the order. Yesterday I have bought meat. Ich habe gestern die Tasche bezahlt. I have paid yesterday for the bag, or yesterday I have paid for the bag. Okay? I guess this is clear so far. So this would be the verbs with prefix. There's just missing one theoretical aspect regarding the perfect at the A1 level. And that would be the order of a sentence. I mean, I have shown it already in the examples, so I guess it's just a small repetition, but anyway, we have again a look at the order. As I said, the most important aspect is the auxiliary verb second position, and as a reminder, second position does not mean second word of the sentence. For example, am Samstag means on Saturday. It's just a preposition and an article, this and am Samstag counts at one part. That's the first position. So habe stays here at the second position. Okay, just as a reminder, if I'm saying second position, does not mean second word of the sentence. So ich habe am Samstag gespielt, for example, means I have played on Saturday. So auxiliary verb, second position. As I said, the subject can be first or after the conjugated auxiliary verb, so can be first or third position. And at the end of the sentence, we have the participle 2. So the participle 2 is at the last position. That would be the sentence structure. In questions, just if somebody is asking, yeah, how would look a question in Perfekt, you do not touch the sentence order rules. They are just the same in questions. Remember, in questions, the first position is the verb, or if we have a question word, the verb is after the question word. For example, hast du am Samstag gespielt? Hast you played on Saturday? Okay, so first position is the auxiliary verb. Second position is the subject, the complements, and then at the end of everything of the question, the participle 2, the main verb in participle 2. In case of a question word, the question word is in front of everything. So it's basically the same order, you just add the question word in front. When have you played on Saturday? Okay, so you put the question word with W, wann, in front of the conjugated auxiliary verb. Remember, in the X order for question, it's applying as well in Perfekt. In questions, you have the verb first and then the subject all the time. There's no other option. You cannot start a question differently. You have to start with the verb if you have no question word. Okay. And here we have the Verneinung, negation. Okay, if you want to negate a sentence, it's basically the same. Okay, for example, ich habe am Samstag nicht gespielt. I have not played on Saturday. So we do not touch the rules. So imagine, I mean, in a positive way, it would be just without nicht. Ich habe am Samstag gespielt. So the big question is basically where to put nicht. Okay, the answer is you put nicht there where you put it in the positive sentence. Okay, the present sentence. Okay, if the sentence is in present or in perfect, it doesn't matter. The position of nicht stays the same. Okay. So I've told you the default position of nicht is at the end of the sentence. Still apply in perfect sentence, but we have now two parts that want to be at the last position. Nicht and the Partizip 2. And the Partizip 2 is overruling nicht. So the Partizip 2 is stronger. Okay, if we have nicht and Partizip 2 in a sentence, nicht is before the Partizip 2. Partizip 2 is really at the end, and nicht is right before that. If we have no exception, then nicht has to be earlier in the sentence. Okay, that's why I said just the default position of nicht is at the end of the sentence. So if you find no exception, you place nicht at the end of the sentence before the Partizip 2. Okay, ich habe am Samstag nicht gespielt. I have not played on Saturday. So it's not like in English where you have nicht after the auxiliary verb. No. By default, you have it at the end of the sentence. As we have here two parts that want to be at the end, the participle is stronger, so nicht is before the Partizip 2. Doesn't matter if you rearrange the sentence and start with the temporal information. Am Samstag habe ich nicht stays at the end of the sentence before the Partizip 2. Am Samstag habe ich nicht gespielt. Okay? If we have now an exception, like for example, an adjective or an adverb, schnell, fast, would be an adjective. In that case, if I want to build a sentence, I have not played fast, nicht is in front of the adjective. That's an exception, okay? That's why I meant, doesn't matter if you build a sentence in present or perfect, nicht is there where it should be regarding the rules. And the rules are applying for present and for perfect as well. So in this case, it's in front of the adjective. That's an exception. The Partizip 2 stays all the time at the end of the sentence. Nicht, by default, it's before the Partizip 2 if you have an exception, like an adjective. In this case, you want to negate just the adjective. So you have played, but you haven't played fast. So the information you want to negate is fast. That's why it's in front of fast, okay? Because you don't want to negate the whole phrase or the verb spielen. You want to negate the information fast. That's why it's in front of this information. That's why it's in front of the adjective. That's why nicht is in front of the adjective. Ich habe nicht schnell gespielt. I haven't played fast. Okay? So in short, you can say the negation, the perfect has no influence on the order regarding the negation. By default, nicht before the Partizip 2. If you have exceptions, like adjective or adverbs, for example, it's in front of the adjective or adverbs. Or for example, prepositional expressions, then you have it as well in front of the prepositional expression. But that's also a little bit advanced, okay? As I said, all these sentence ordering is quite difficult in German. You start really to learn it at the beginning of the B1 level. There you get the first time a rule that helps you a little bit. So therefore, at the beginning, the position of the verb and the subject is the key information. This you should apply correct at the A1 level in main clauses already, okay? If you make some errors regarding the positioning of nicht, it's accepted at the A1 level. Okay, that's fine. That is normal. But I mentioned it already how it should be. Okay, so this was already all the theory regarding the perfect. I hope it was clear. Let's apply it in some examples. Wir kommen zu den Übungen. Okay? Wir fangen einfach an. Ihr müsst das Partizip 2 bilden. Okay? We start easy. You have to build the Partizip 2 of the verbs in brackets. Am Montag hat er Sport. Was ist das Partizip 2 von machen? Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung: Am Montag hat er Sport gemacht. As usual, pause the video if necessary. I will provide the solutions immediately, more or less. Remember, for the regular ones, you cut en at ge in front and t at the end of the stem. Gemacht. By the way, if I do not mention something, if you do not know, or let's say if you do not know that a verb is irregular, apply the regular rules for it regarding the Partizip 2, okay? You just build an irregular Partizip 2 if you know that the Partizip 2 is irregular. If you don't know, apply the regular rules. Hast du am Wochenende? Was ist das Partizip von tanzen? Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung: Hast du am Wochenende getanzt? Again, regular verb, G in front of the stem, T at the end of the stem. Nächstes Beispiel. Ihr habt in Wien. Was ist das Partizip 2 von studieren? Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung: Ihr habt in Wien studiert. Studieren is the third regular group, I-E-R-E-N ending. In this case, we just cut EN and add a T, no GE in front. It's not, ihr habt in Wien gestudiert, it's just studiert. Nächstes Beispiel. Haben Sie am Freitag, was ist das Partizip von arbeiten? Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung: Haben Sie am Freitag gearbeitet? Okay, second group of regular verbs, the ones that are ending with TEN or DEN. In this case, you just cut N. You keep the E of the ending, okay? But still you're adding GE in front and you're adding a T at the end. Therefore, you would have, haben Sie am Freitag gearbeitet? Now we are changing a little bit the exercise. Now you have to select the auxiliary verb, if it's haben or sein, okay? Was ist richtig? Wir haben oder sind um 2 Uhr am Flughafen angekommen. Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung: Wir sind um 2 Uhr am Flughafen angekommen. We have arrived at 2 a.m. at the airport. Ankommen, to arrive, change of place, so it's built with the auxiliary verb sein. Was ist richtig? Sie ist oder hat Tennis gespielt? Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung: Sie hat Tennis gespielt. Okay? Spielen. I can understand if somebody is interpreting now like what? To play tennis, that's a lot of movement. Okay? So I can understand it if somebody has chosen the auxiliary verb sein. Unfortunately, spielen, I mean, can be also to play cards or something like this. It's not interpreted as a movement in German. So it's a regular one which is built with haben. Okay? If it's not working out for you very good to apply the rule regarding the movement, you can also just study the list of the verbs that are built with sein in perfect. Okay? This movement rule is just a help that you don't have to study the list. But obviously, if you don't feel comfortable with this or happening some examples like this one that like you could interpret spielen as well as a movement, then go for it and just memorize the list of the verbs that are built with sein. Okay, spielen is one with the auxiliary verb haben. Sie hat Tennis gespielt. Nächstes Beispiel. Was ist richtig? Ich bin oder habe 3 Stunden geblieben. Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung: Ich bin 3 Stunden geblieben. I have stayed 3 hours. This was the big exception I mentioned. To stay, bleiben, is with the verb sein. Okay, so the 2 first formats were more or less just to warm up. Now I have here a present sentence and you have to transform it to a sentence in perfect. Okay, so you want to say the exact same thing, just in perfect. So instead of we go to the cinema, you want to say we have gone to the cinema. Okay? Also, wie ist wir gehen ins Kino im Perfekt? Ihr seid dran. Und die Antwort: Wir sind ins Kino gegangen. Remember, gehen, to go, that's definitely a change of place. That's definitely with the verb sein. So, first position, I have chosen the subject. You could have chosen as well ins Kino sind wir gegangen. Okay, you could start a sentence as well with ins Kino if you want so. Would be a rare order, but you could do so. Most common one, you start with the subject, auxiliary verb, the conjugated one, second position. As I mentioned, it's the verb sein for gehen. Then all the complements, and at the end, the participle of gehen. That was a tricky one. That's the irregular one. The correct one would be gegangen. Now, there is a lot of information to memorize in this video. It's normal that you will not memorize all irregular forms I have mentioned in the video. Du siehst einen Film. You watch a movie. Wie ist der Satz im Perfekt? Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung? Du hast einen Film gesehen. Sehen, no movement. It's with the verb haben as auxiliary verb. First position, subject, du. Second position, auxiliary verb haben. Then all the complements, in this case, einen Film. And at the end, we are adding the partizip 2 of the main verb of sehen. Unfortunately, it's irregular, so it's gesehen. Okay? So, here you can see already in my example sentence that the most common verbs like sehen or something like this are the irregular ones. That's why I mentioned you will quickly memorize them because this will be the verb or the forms you will face a lot. Die Familie ruft den Großvater an. Sorry. The family calls the grandfather. The grandfather. Wie ist der Satz im Perfekt? Ihr seid dran. Die Lösung? Die Familie hat den Großvater angerufen. Anrufen, to call, no movement, auxiliary verb haben. We start with the subject, that would be the easiest order. Die Familie. Second position, conjugation of the auxiliary verb haben. For die Familie, third person singular, so hat. Then all the complements. And then we add the participle of the verb. It's a little bit difficult to see. Anrufen. Remember, it's a separable prefix. Remember what I have said regarding the separable prefixes one. First the prefix, then GE, and then the participle. In case of rufen, it stays rufen, okay? Angerufen would be called. Die Familie hat den Großvater angerufen. The family has called the grandfather. Okay. Dann Thorsten bekommt ein Paket. Thorsten receives a package. Wie ist der Satz im Perfekt? Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung? Thorsten hat ein Paket bekommen. Bekommen, to receive, is built with haben. So we start with the first position, the subject, then we conjugate the auxiliary verb haben. That would be hat for third person singular. Then we add all the complements, and at the end, at the last position, we add the partizip 2. Remember, be, so be, is a non-separable prefix. Remember, there's no ge in the participle of those verbs. So we just have bekommen without ge, okay? And kommen has an irregular one, so that's why there's no t at the end, it stays kommen. Together, Thorsten hat ein Paket bekommen, Thorsten has received a package. Okay, so these were a lot of examples. I hope the examples have helped to understand it a little bit better. Obviously, it needs a lot of practice. Also, the perfect is at the beginning of the A2 curriculum again, okay? So at the beginning of the A2 level, there's a repetition of the perfect normally in official courses, let's say. In this context, I hope the video was helpful, and as usual, tschüss, bis bald!